Welcome, students. Let's have the new session. In today's session, we shall discuss about corporate forms in tourism. Corporate forms in tourism. To understand the corporate forms in tourism, let us first go to the objective of this unit and then we shall detail things further. The objectives of this unit are to describe the functions of the main business form. So that means there are more than one business forms that we need to, take care of or need to understand. Next is something like what are the business forms like sole proprietorship, a partnership, a company. We shall go in each of them to understand what is sole proprietorship, what is a partnership, and what is a company. We should also see um, the advantages and disadvantages of these business forms. In this whole unit, which will be divided into three subsections, we should also appreciate the features of each business form. Now, I'm very sure that you would have actually, worked on segments of tourism industry. Let's revisit them. In TS1 Unit 5, you must have discussed various segments of tourism industry and along with various types of services. Now, tourism facilitates and services are provided by a variety of organizations with the different types of ownership. Yes, the word says ownership. So when you talk about ownership, so I'll give you a very good example here. So when you go to a tourism destination, let's say again, as usual, I take one destination which is close to my heart. Let's say you go from Delhi to Jammu. Now in Jammu, you see there are a destination called Patnitop, or there's a destination called Mansar. Now this Mansar is a lake, and Patnitop is a hill station, right? Who owns that lake? Who owns that hill station? There are some hotels for sure, there are some restaurants for sure, but who owns the destination itself? So that's comes the ownership. Now, on the contrary, if you ask you example, who owns restaurant A or restaurant B in a particular destination, let it be Delhi. So you will say person A or person B, which is a private person who owns a destination. Let's say if it's owned by an owner who's a private person rather than a government organization, it's referred to as a private sector. But when it comes to government sector, it comes public sector. There are some other organizations, ownership also, something called PPP, which is public and private partnership. That's another sector, that is another way that this runs in hospitality and tourism. Now, do you think there are again further two division? One when they do for profit, one then they do not for profit. So there's an organization called for profit organization, the other organization not for profit organization. We shall discuss. So for profit organizations, their main motive is, yes, they do business, but their objective is to make sure when they do business they have something profit coming out of it. All right, any restaurant, any hotel, any organization which is running in terms of a business and comes back as they want, end of the day they have calculated amount of money they want back from that particular business that they're running. That will be restaurant, anyone, right? And that's fair. But when you come to instead, you look at it, we have a government organization who is looking for environment. So what would they do? They have wildlife sanctuary, right? So wildlife sanctuary is actually to conserve the environment, right? To conserve the wildlife. But at the same time, there's a tourism, activities going on over there. So this is a tourism activity. This is actually into a wildlife. You go into the wildlife, you have a tours over there, you have some activities over there, but the purpose is to make sure that we conserve the environment, right? So they are actually looking at not mainly for the profit that comes out of it, but their profit comes in the conserving the environment, the flora and the fauna and whatnot. So that's because not for profit and profit. So there are organization called non-government organization, NGOs. That's another organization that could be part of it. So in our sector, in tourism sector, we may have well segmentations of each of them, right? Now, they all exist together and we will actually come across It could be in smaller organization or it could be the bigger organizations. Now, we must remember that all the enterprises or all the businesses that are there in tourism, they are all aiming at transforming available resources into tourism products. And we need to understand what are available resources. I'm sure by now you understand available resources could be natural or man-made. Natural resources could be mountains, snow, river, seabed, or also not seabed, I would say a seashore, any coastline, anything, even lakes. So they're natural, right? Artificial could be when you have monuments, when you have a palace, when you have a building or a haveli, many things. You have any parks and museums that you have made, they are actually man-made, right? Now, so all these organizations are using any of those in transforming into it. So that becomes a tourism product. That means when a product is there, that means when a person can go and enjoy the services at that particular destination. So that destination becomes a product. Let's say, again, I'll take you example. If there is a Mansar, which I'm giving example in Jammu, Mansar actually becomes a destination. That is a product. What is Mansar using? Mansar is using local flora, plants, uh, animals, fauna, then local. Even you would say when you go on the way, you see some huts, old huts are made of thatch and wood, and you would see some people, who are actually dressed locally. And not only that, the Mansar is actually using its lake. It's a huge lake they're using. They have a lot of players come over there. There's a lot of boating. The people with the horses, they do the business, horse riding. And then there is as such people, restaurants or the eateries are there. There's a government accommodation. So what I'm trying to say is that becomes a tourism product because that is a place which attracts people, have the amenities, accessibility, amenities like toilet, where they can go for toilet, car parking, or government services. They have accessibility by road. You can reach over there from Udhampur, from Jammu. They have attraction, that is the lake itself is attraction, and there's a fort nearby lake, that's another attraction. And what is this? Amenity, attraction, access, accessibility, accommodation given by your Jammu Kashmir government. So that's again becomes a product where a person can go and stay and enjoy. It could be a day trip, it could be a overnight stay, but that becomes a tourism product. So what I was trying to give you example was that, that all these entities, all these businesses, they use the resources available. So that resources could be man-made or that could be, natural. Now, obviously, all those, because we're talking about various forms of tourism, forms of businesses that are there, corporate forms of businesses which are there in tourism. So these actually are guided, or they are influenced by various factors, such as maybe as someone who's actually putting up a tea stall, or a small, souvenir, outlet, like a cafe, or sorry, souvenir cafe, souvenir shop, or maybe a stall, maybe a handicraft. Maybe he's doing by hand some painting. So they may have less amount of money, and this could also be a bigger hotel chain could be there, which has more bigger amount of money. So what is happening is that there are a lot of regulations which take care of the size and the way they manage, taxation policies, and there are, like, could be some constraints like skills. What is the organization? Is it a not-for-profit organization or it is a for-profit organization? What are the objectives and motives? And all that is actually involved while you preparing the destination, or they what the objectives are there in terms of operations, in terms of when you are setting up a business in a particular destination. So all those different corporate forms um, can be from smaller to bigger, can be from partnership to public to private, part or to a partnership, and that also they coexist in the tourism system or tourism destinations. Now, What we're going to do is we're going to take few principal business forms and discuss in detail from those forms. But I'm sure by now I have given you a bit of understanding about different forms of tourism businesses that happen in tourism sector. Okay. Now, they do differ from each other, for sure. They do differ from each other, and obviously we will be actually discussing those differences also. Now, not just the differences, we shall also look at what could be the advantages and disadvantages of different business forms. So I give one example, that you know the business is ownership, or a business is a public ownership or a private ownership. So when there's a public ownership, that means we're looking for the best interest of the community, or industry, or taking care of flora, fauna, and nature. So they have more interest into developing the environment, more interest in developing that overall society. That means the tickets could be lower priced, they might not be higher. Have you ever seen the tickets at any zoo, or and tickets at monuments? Even if you go to Taj Mahal, you look at the ticket, or if you go to Lal Killa, you take a look at the ticket pricing, right? Wherein when you go to movie theater and you look at the ticket pricing, so it's a huge difference, isn't it? So again, private theaters are, they're privately owned. They're not a tourism destination, but then I give just give an example. But wherein if you look at hotels, if you look at any theme parks, you have Apu was it, right? Yeah, earlier. So you have a lot of theme parks come up. Look at the ticket at theme parks and look at the ticket at Lal Killa. So you'll see the difference in both. Okay, now, so that's again, they have advantages and disadvantages based on the what business structure they come on. And obviously now let's look at more specifically the topic in the initial to start with. I would like to start with a description of the concepts, and the concepts of the market, the service, and the industry. So let's decipher or detail these three concepts of the service, market, and industry. Now, we shall take one thing at a time. Number first, that all those different forms and corporates of business have come up because as a society we grew, right? If you go back centuries and centuries before, it used to be everyone used to prepare their own, in the farms. They used to have, someone has a milk, will have milk to give it to someone else. Instead of milk, he will take something else what he needs, or clothes, or food, or iron, whatever there used to be barter system, right? Then the currency came, and then people started using currency to give, buy milk and whatnot. And then that's exactly how the whole society is working so far, right? And that's how we develop and grow, and the different currencies coming up. And I'm sure you would have heard of something called cryptocurrency, which is still at the moment not very, it's a naive, it's not coming up yet anyways. So the point comes over here that the system of buying and purchasing things, goods and services, is actually being very quite coming from quite a large number of years, and that is actually done for the survival of the whole society and product, and that really brings the development in the product. Now, our product actually is tourism, right? So in tourism product, that means what do we sell? That's another big question I really want to ask you. If I have to sell a mobile phone, which is a product, right? So what instead will be a tourism product, which I just explained you earlier. So in our tourism product, and when you go to a Mansa place, you actually don't buy and bring anything with you, isn't it? You spend money though, maybe more than what you're spending on a mobile phone, but you don't get anything with you except for your experiences, except for you maybe a few photographs clicked on it, right? And yeah, those are moments that you carry with you, and that's what this tourism all about. Okay, now it becomes a little bit complex to make you understand that about product and service, but for sure we shall be able to decipher this. Okay, now what we used to do, as I said earlier, that even now what happens in the business world, that we exchange, right? We exchange goods and services, right? We exchange commodities. So now we need to actually understand the word commodity. Now, what is a commodity, and how is a commodity different from goods, right? So as per the Oxford Dictionary, commodity is actually a raw material or a primary agricultural product that can be bought and sold, such as maybe copper or even coffee, right? So what is it? So it's a raw material that is primarily an agriculture product, but may not be, that can be bought and sold as per copper of coffee board. Or you could also say commodity is a good which is produced to be exchanged. So not just the barter system, it's a good which is produced to be exchanged, to be bought and sold. So let's make it this way. So I have a product which is called mobile phone. So it is produced so that it can be exchanged. What do I exchange my mobile phone for? I exchange my mobile